The rain was coming down so hard that the back seat got soaked before we even got started. The windshield wipers on Adam's old car were making this awful scraping noise against the glass. Street lights were flickering through the wet windows as we sat there, hidden behind the church where nobody would think to look. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears as I moved around on the slippery leather seat. He moved closer from behind, his chest pressing against my back, and I could feel his warm breath on my neck. His hands found my waist, his thumbs brushing that spot where my skirt ended and my skin began. I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted blood. My fingers gripped the seat belt buckle tight. I didn't push him away. I couldn't bring myself to do it. His breathing got heavier as his hand slipped under my shirt. Every part of me felt like it was on fire. Not because he was being rough, but because every touch was so careful and slow, like he was saying things we'd never spoken out loud. I felt his body pressing against me, gently pushing me deeper into something I'd been fighting against for years. I closed my eyes and listened to the rain hitting the roof, felt his warm hand moving along my ribs, felt my legs shaking in a way that gave me away completely. I wanted to make myself stop. I tried to squeeze my hands together as a silent way of saying no, but I couldn't follow through with it. It didn't feel like I was crossing some forbidden line. It felt like coming home to something I wasn't supposed to want. I'm 39 years old, married, with 2 kids who have moved out. I used to think that deep longing died when your life settled into the same routine every day. I taught classes at the community center, took care of my garden, and smiled at church dinners. I was really good at being invisible. Adam was 24, a friend of my daughter's from college who came back home for the summer to help fix the church's old roof. He was polite and respectful, not some predator, just someone who was truly alive. He talked to me like I was a real person, not just someone filling a role. He noticed the gray streaks in my hair and asked if they bothered me. He actually laughed at my jokes. He really listened to me. I hadn't felt that kind of attention since I stopped caring about myself. When he kissed me, it wasn't something he stole from me, it was like he was offering me something, asking me a question. "Are you still here?" And I realized I couldn't lie anymore. My heart was pounding under his touch. My body leaned back toward him. My lips opened. His whisper was so fragile, "Tell me to stop." I didn't say a word. I wanted more of everything. What would you do if the one person you weren't supposed to want was the only one who ever really saw who you were? If you've ever carried feelings you weren't allowed to say out loud, then this story might touch something familiar inside you. Please hit that like button and subscribe. The longer you stay with these stories, the more they'll reach others who need them just as quietly. The smell of wet earth filled the air the morning after everything changed. My hands were deep in the flower beds, planting bright orange flowers by the front porch, though I couldn't remember why I picked those particular ones. They were my mother's favorites, bright and protective, so I planted them like they were some kind of shield. My husband Mark was upstairs, still getting better from his back surgery. I could hear him moving around on the bed, the faint creaking of the floorboards above me. We hadn't slept in the same room since his surgery. That was my idea. I told him he needed his rest. He agreed without arguing. There was no anger between us, just this careful distance, like a silent dance we'd gotten perfect at over 19 years of marriage. Adam came into our lives right at the beginning of summer. He was working as a helper for the church renovation project, roof tiles, gutters, repairs, anything that needed fixing. Mark trusted him completely. I trusted him too, because who wouldn't like a young man who worked hard and made polite conversation? He moved with this easy confidence, like he knew the world would make room for him to exist. At first, our conversations were just basic politeness. He'd say hello through the kitchen door, dripping wet from the rain, asking if I needed groceries picked up or help opening a stubborn jar. I'd hand him a towel, offer him a cold glass of water, and watch him dry off his hair that was stuck to his forehead, his shirt heavy with rainwater. My heart would start beating faster then, and I'd scold myself for it. He was just helping out. A good young man. But every time I saw him lean in close, pointing out a broken tile on the roof from where he stood on the ladder, his breath mixing with the afternoon breeze, I felt something shift deep in my chest. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, almost impossible to notice at first, a shared laugh when coffee grounds spilled everywhere. The way he said, "You always make the best pancakes," when I'd forgotten I even cooked anything at all. He watched me the way I'd forgotten people could watch, not starring inappropriately, just really noticing me. I'd smile and look away, but that ache would stay with me. I remembered my mother's warning, "Don't go looking for trouble, Claire." But the trouble had been hiding quietly here for months, behind every thank you and every careful touch that lasted just a second too long. By the time July's sun got really harsh, I was watering those orange flowers every day, sometimes twice, just to feel like something was growing. And every time I reached for the watering can, I could feel him there behind me, waiting. We'd been in the same space for years, family friend, helper, part of the background. Nothing inappropriate had ever happened until now. Summer evenings in our small town were thick with humidity and seemed to go on forever, the air so heavy you could almost taste it. I'd leave the porch light on as I walked to the garage. Mark still needed help with some errands, and I'd find Adam leaning against his truck with tools in his hands, his boots all scuffed up from working on the roof. The light overhead made his shadow look bigger and more defined against the house. He'd look up, catch my eye, and give me this half-smile. "Hey, Claire." His voice was soft and familiar. I'd smile back, my heart doing this little jump, and lean the watering can against the wall. We started doing small tasks together. One of us would hold the ladder steady while the other one changed roof tiles. I'd hand him a hammer, he'd brush sawdust out of my hair. Every touch seemed innocent, until suddenly it wasn't anymore. His fingers would brush against my lower back as he walked past, and I'd take such a sharp breath that I'd startle myself. One evening when rain was coming, we'd finished cleaning up debris and found ourselves standing in the narrow doorway between the garage and kitchen, the warm light inside contrasting with the dark driveway outside. He was holding this big tarp with rain dripping off its edges. I reached for the other side. Our hands met in the middle, palms flat, our breathing mixing together in the small space. He didn't let go of his side, I didn't pull away. "It's supposed to rain all week," he said, his eyes locked on mine. I swallowed hard. "Great for the garden." He watched me fold the top part, his gaze feeling heavy and intense. "You've been taking care of those orange flowers like they're precious." I pressed my lips together. "They're special." He nodded like he understood exactly why. The silence rolled in thick like the storm clouds gathering behind him. I felt the tension getting tighter and tighter. My fingers were shaking where they still touched his. After that moment, these little incidents kept happening more and more. The way he'd lean too close in the doorway just to hear what I was saying. The way I'd catch him watching me through the kitchen window while I stirred soup. The way my pulse would race when his boots scraped against the floor as he stepped inside. It was all so unexpected. One afternoon when Mark was at physical therapy, I was in the laundry room folding sheets with the dryer humming behind me. Adam stuck his head in, looking for a wrench. He jumped a little when he saw me there, his eyes getting wide. "Sorry," he said, pushing the door open all the way and stepping inside. "I just need." His voice trailed off as he noticed the stack of towels I was folding. He leaned back against the dryer, so close that I could feel the warmth coming off his body even though the room was cool. I handed him the tool he needed, and our fingers touched. It was like electricity. He froze completely. I froze too. We didn't pull our hands back. We just stood there while the dryer hummed, covering up the sound of our breathing. In that small, hidden room, surrounded by laundry baskets and dust particles floating in a thin beam of light, all those years of feelings we'd never spoken about became something real and undeniable. He cleared his throat. "I should go." I nodded, but I didn't step to the side to let him pass. My heart was pounding so loud I was worried he could hear it, and I knew right then that nothing would ever be the same between us. It was the night of that terrible storm. Wind was rattling the garage doors and their small window panes. Lightning kept flashing white light across the cracked concrete floor, and rain was hitting the metal roof like some urgent drumbeat. I'd gone out there to get my box of old photographs, memories I couldn't face alone, and found Adam unpacking his tools under a single bare light bulb. His jeans were wet at the bottom, the front of his t-shirt stuck to his chest from getting caught in the sudden downpour. He didn't look up when I opened the side door. I stepped inside, shutting out the roar of the storm, and leaned against the doorframe with my heart pounding hard. "Forgot these," I said, holding up the cardboard box. My voice was shaking against the sound of the wind outside. He took the box from me, setting it down on a workbench that was crowded with paint cans and wooden planks. Our hands brushed electric and unplanned. He stopped halfway around the box, his fingers curled around mine. The sound of rain overhead paused for a moment, and the whole world felt suspended in time. "I didn't want to leave you alone in the storm," he said, his voice low and soft. He knelt down, sorting through wrenches by size, but I stayed frozen by the door. I swallowed hard. "Thanks." I stepped forward, drawn into that soft circle of light. Water was still dripping from his hair onto the concrete floor. He looked up when I got close enough to touch him. "Claire," he whispered, and there was a question in the way he said my name. I closed the gap between us. The damp scent of him, earth and rain, and something intimate hit me full in the face. My breath caught, and I knew this was the moment I'd been both dreading and hoping for. He stood up, moving between me and the box on the bench. Rain was spattering through the open door behind him. I felt trapped by the storm's rhythm and the intensity of his gaze. "You shouldn't," I managed to say, my voice breaking apart. "I know," he said. He moved closer, slow and deliberate. He reached out and brushed a wet strand of hair away from my forehead. His fingertips left a trail of warmth on my skin. But I can't stop myself. My pulse was thundering in my ears. Every thought in my head was screaming, "Don't," but every muscle in my body ached to say yes. I pressed my palms flat against the bench behind me, trying to ground myself in reality. I watched his chest rise and fall, watched the storm lights dance across his face. He tilted my chin up with one finger, forcing me to look directly into his eyes. "Tell me to go," he breathed. I couldn't say the words. Instead, I leaned in until our breath was mixing together. His mouth found mine in a collision of relief and desire. It wasn't desperate or frantic. It felt as inevitable as the storm we'd been running from. I pressed against him with my heart, my body, my mind, surrendering to something I'd buried far too deep for far too long. His hands held my waist gently, mine tangled in his damp hair, my fingers tightening on the wet strands. He lifted me up onto the bench, and the cold edge pressed against the back of my thighs. The world outside exploded with thunder, but in that dim garage, all I could feel was him. He slid his hands under the bottom of my shirt, gentle at first, then more urgent, exploring places I'd kept closed off for years. My skin sparked everywhere he touched, every nerve coming alive. The bench creaked under our weight. A loose bolt rolled across the floor with a metallic sound. I gasped when his body lined up perfectly with mine. The weight of him felt firm and reassuring and terrifying all at once. His lips brushed along my collarbone, then moved upward. I closed my eyes, leaning back until the damp wood pressed against my spine. Rainwater was trailing down his arm in a thin line. "Are you okay?" he whispered against my skin. I nodded, having lost my voice completely. The answer was there in my pulse, fast and messy and desperate. He hesitated for just a moment, his hand steadying me before pressing closer. The world shrank down to just the small space between the bench and his body, to the collision of our breathing. Every whisper of fabric moving, every flicker of light, every drop of rain on the metal roof made the weight of what we were doing feel even more intense. I felt him deep and slow inside me. Not the overwhelming fullness I'd feared or imagined in my secret thoughts, but something more meaningful than that. A deep ache meeting a truth I'd denied for too long. My brain kept trying to scream stop, but my body refused to listen. Instead, I made soft sounds, gripping his shoulders tight, my head thrown back. Outside, lightning lit up everything bright white. I opened my eyes to see his face, eyes closed, looking almost worshipful. He held me like I was something fragile, like this moment might break us both into pieces. When he eased away from me, we stayed pressed together, sweat and rain mixing on our skin. Our breathing slowed down to match the pulse of the dying storm. He rested his forehead against mine. "I didn't plan for this to happen," he whispered. "Neither did I replied, my voice rough and raw. "But I've been thinking about it for years." He pulled back slightly, searching my eyes with his. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I shook my head, tears filling my eyes for reasons I couldn't even name. I was afraid. He kissed me gently then, an apology, a promise, and a question all wrapped up in one. I trembled in his arms, knowing we'd crossed a line that silence had been holding for far too long, and there was absolutely no way to go back now. I didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, I sat on the edge of the guest bed with the window cracked open so the storm's last breaths could slip inside. The sheets still smelled like damp denim, and rain, even though he'd left hours ago, slipping away without saying a word. I traced the water marks on the mattress with shaking fingers, my heart still beating too loud in the silence. Morning came gray and hesitant. I showered quickly, using soap that smelled like lavender, trying to wash away more than just the rain. My skin was still tingling everywhere he'd touched me. I got dressed in loose pants and a button-down shirt to hide any marks I thought might still be there. In the bathroom mirror, I caught sight of my reflection, eyes bright, cheeks hollow with want and guilt mixed together. The normal routine of my day felt completely foreign. I petted the cat, fed the fish, made coffee, but everything tasted flat and dull. I watched through the kitchen window as those orange flowers I'd planted so carefully drooped under the weight of their rain-soaked petals. It occurred to me that I was wilting too, just like them. Adam didn't text me, not even a simple emoji to let me know he'd made it through the night okay. That silence burned inside me. I found myself checking my phone every single hour, my thumb hovering over his name in my contacts, then pushing the phone away. I was caught between dreading his reply and desperately longing for it at the same time. I saw him that evening across the backyard. I was trimming the hedge with garden shears. He was stacking leftover lumber by the shed. The setting sun was glinting off the wet wooden planks. He paused in his work, saw me watching, and for just a moment, just a flicker, his face showed regret and desire in the exact same heartbeat. Then he turned away, arranging the wood like it was a barrier he was building between us. My breath caught in my throat. I kept pruning, letting the blades graze my skin, using the sting to remind myself I was still alive and real. Every snip of the shears echoed like a countdown to whatever would happen next. Inside the house, Mark was upstairs, back to normal now, or as normal as we ever got to be. He called down that dinner would be ready in 30 minutes. I nodded, my voice stuck completely in my throat. I wiped my hands on my jeans, trying to scrub away the memory of Adam's palm on my waist. But it wasn't just the physical touch that haunted me. It was what that touch had promised. At the dinner table, I sipped wine with Mark and forced laughter at his work stories, but my mind kept replaying the gasp I'd held back in that garage. I could still feel those wet walls pressing in around us, that single light bulb spotlighting our secret moment. After dinner, I excused myself to clear the dishes. In the quiet kitchen, I leaned against the counter, my fingers brushing a faint mark on the wood where Adam had pressed his hand when he caught me in his arms. My pulse fluttered, answering a question I hadn't dared ask out loud. A message lit up my phone's screen. His name appeared and my heart lifted, then crashed down hard. But it was Alicia, my sister, reminding me to send photos from last weekend's family picnic. Not Adam. I stared at the screen until my vision got blurry. Then I grabbed a kitchen towel and stormed into the laundry room, slamming the door behind me. The dryer's humming was deafening in the small space. I collapsed against it, hot tears slipping down my cheeks. I touched the warm metal and remembered his breath on my neck, his words, "I've wanted this for so long." I folded a towel without really seeing what I was doing. Each crease felt like a crease being pressed into my conscience. I tried to replay our conversation, trying to figure out whether he regretted what happened or just needed some space to think. I couldn't tell which possibility scared me more. That night, I lay in bed next to Mark, his back curved away from me, like we'd never been truly close. I stared up at the ceiling fan, watching its blades move quietly and steadily, completely oblivious to everything. I wanted to confess everything, to rip the truth free from where it was lodged in my chest, but my throat got tight every time I tried to form the words. I settled for pressing my palm against his shoulder, letting the warmth anchor me to the wrong bed with the wrong person. Over the next few days, I found excuses to avoid being anywhere near Adam. I changed my route across the driveway when I saw him coming. I sent Mark out on errands whenever I spotted Adam's truck in our driveway. But no matter where I went, I felt the weight of what we'd done together, this ache that pulsed constantly behind my ribs. On Thursday, I caught him in the hallway by the mudroom. His hand was hovering over the light switch like he was trying to decide whether to come inside or not. I stood with my back pressed against the wall, a linen towel clutched in my hand. We both froze completely. The space between us felt electric and dangerous. He closed his eyes briefly and let out a long breath. "Claire." I looked at him tired, regretful, wanting, seeing my own reflection in his eyes. I couldn't make myself speak. He flipped the light switch and the lights blazed on suddenly. We both flinched like we'd been blinded by the brightness. He took half a step backward and whispered, "I'm sorry." Then he turned around and walked away, his boots echoing down the hallway. I dropped the towel on the floor, feeling my heart shatter like glass hitting concrete. Guilt flooded through me, sharp and irreversible. But even as it tore at my insides, there was something else I felt longing, raw and relentless. I should have hated him for what he'd done to my life. I tried to hate him. I tried to mourn what I'd lost: trust, innocence, a normal life that made sense. Instead, I craved him more than ever before. Every memory of his warmth haunted me constantly. Every quiet moment became a countdown to his next glance in my direction. I stood alone in that bright hallway, breathing fast and shallow, the ache throbbing through every part of me. My hands were shaking. I wanted to hate myself even more because wanting him was wrong. Wanting more when I'd already had too much was completely unforgivable. But I couldn't make myself stop. We weren't reckless people. We'd been too careful for too long. And now everything felt like too much to handle. That Sunday, the backyard was completely quiet except for the soft humming of the sprinkler as it cycled through the dying orange flowers. I stood under the wide oak tree's shade with my arms folded, watching the arcs of water glisten in the afternoon light. Mark was inside taking a nap. The kids were off somewhere with their friends. I leaned against the rough bark of the tree, my fingertip tracing its deep grooves, wondering if any tree could truly stand completely alone. Then I saw him, Adam, walking toward me from the side gate with his toolbox swinging at his side. The grass made squishy sounds under his boots as he walked. He stopped about 5 feet away from me, his eyes meeting mine. The summer breeze tugged at his damp hair, and the toolbox seemed to droop in his hand, heavy with all the questions neither of us had asked. He didn't wave hello or smile, just stood there like a stranger at the edge of a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to keep.